Which do you actually think you're going to do more, on-road or off-road?
Sadly, on-road.
Do you think you're going to be more of a overland traveler or just ride for weekend thrills?
Ride for weekend thrills.
Are you more concerned with creature comforts or performance?
Performance.
Are you monogamous to your motorcycle, or are you a moto speed dater?
Nope, I'm a monogamous kind of rider.
Are you going to be judiciously frugal or spare no expense?
I'll probably spare no expense at this stage of the game.
Is lighter faster, or are you going to throw in the kitchen sink?
Lighter's faster, dude.
Are you going to buy from eBay and work in the garage, or are you going to stay close to the dealer?
I'm working from the garage.
Have you caught the latest BDR video and decided maybe now's the time to pull the trigger on an adventure bike? Have you been dipping your toe in adventure riding over the past few years and decided, you know what, it's time for an upgrade? Welcome to Moto Adventure Unscripted, a weekly podcast about motorcycles, travel, outdoors, and adventure. Mark joins me today and we unpack how to choose your first or maybe next adventure bike, including things like budget, new versus used, on-road versus off-road preference, seat height, weight, and the whole shebang. As usual, we want to hear from you, the listeners. Hit us with email, motoadvr@gmail.com, or better yet, leave comments here on Spotify. If you really like what you're hearing, do us a favor and share this podcast with your friends. Wherever you're listening, grab your beverage of choice, turn it up, and we hope you enjoy the show. I guess I should just apologize now. We are flying by the seat of our pants a little more than usual. But for folks tuning in today, we want to talk about how to choose your first or maybe next adventure motorcycle. But let's do mail call first, shall we? Dustin sent me an email asking me about my experience with the K60 Ranger. So this is a response, a direct email to me from I think it was from the Tires episode, because you and I talked about a lot of stuff. And
that would make sense.
I don't remember if I mentioned the Ranger on there, but he had asked me about that. So for folks looking, they're getting quite expensive as well. They used to be relatively affordable. For folks here in the States, Hide Now lost their distributor. So that's another reason why they're kind of expensive, because there's only a few places where you can buy them right now. So a lot of people know this K60 Scout. You and I talked about that in the show. The Ranger is kind of like Hide Now's version of the TKC 80. I had a set of those about 2 or 3 years ago and really liked them. In fact, I think I still have the front laying around somewhere. It was in pretty good shape, if I remember correctly. I'm a pretty big fan of that. Like, if you want to do 50-50, they're more aggressive off-road than the K60 Scout by a pretty good margin. And they stick to the road a lot better. They're a lot softer. So that's worthwhile for folks that are interested in that.
I was interested in that tire after you told me about them, and I couldn't find one to buy.
Yeah.
So it looks like a pretty cool tire.
I don't like the fact it's not reversible. We talked about that in that particular show, so folks can go back and listen to that. But I was impressed by it. I just wish they were more affordable, which is pretty much the case with all motorcycle tires now.
Or everything motorcycle related.
For sure. So needless to say, that is not why people are tuning in today. They are here to listen to us talk about what they should do when considering buying a new motorcycle. I'd like to kind of go over some of the topics I want to cover, kind of put a circle around some stuff. So I want to talk about first kind of like, a little bit of your riding philosophy, right? Like who you are and what you like about motorcycles matters, what kind of budget you're dealing with, advantages and disadvantages of new versus used. On-road, off-road preference matters a lot. We all have a lot of hopes and dreams, but there's a lot of reality to where you live and what's going to happen. Seat height, touring versus kind of day tripping, basically bike weight or how that matters, features, technology, and dealer network, and then some closing stuff. So I think those are the basic, we'll call it chapters, that I want to go over here. So
nice. I like it, man. Chapters. It makes us sound like we're into books and stuff.
Shh, don't tell anybody. I think I want to open with philosophy, because I think that matters. I think this is because people tell me stuff like, hey, I'm thinking about buying this bike. And my response is always, well, what's wrong with your current bike?
Yep.
And I think that's surprising because if you get on the internet, that is not at all what your experience is. It's typically like, I just bought this bike and you should buy one too.
Yeah.
So
It's the greatest thing ever. Everybody should be on this motorcycle. I don't even know why they make other motorcycles, Drew.
let's see. So I've bought a new bike in the last 2 years. You bought a new bike. I guess technically it was last year, but
Yeah, but it's the end of the
I
year.
was to say you've barely ridden it at this point, so it's still very
Yep.
new to you. What made you, I mean, what were the things that led to your decision on buying that bike? Like, what's your approach to adventure riding that made that make sense?
Oh man, it's a really good question, and I do ride a lot of road. I like to ride off road, but I have to ride a lot of street to get to where I'm going, and I also enjoy the street. So I really like both things. I'm not one of these guys that's like, oh God, the street. I don't want to ride the street. I only want to ride the dirt. That's just not me. I really prefer a bike around the 1,000 cc displacement range, just for various reasons we can get into. And I wanted something that looked good as well. So I'm vain, dude. I want my stuff to look cool. So I had to check some boxes, and I've also been spoiled with, premium components, suspension, things like that. So it was a pretty short list of motorcycles for me to look at until I settled on my Norden 901 Expedition. Just trying to be honest with myself about, what it was I was going to do with this motorcycle, what I expected it to do, what I was willing to compromise on. There's that word again, compromise, and landed where I did. Price was also a factor, They're finally coming down with their clearance prices into probably the price range they should have been to begin with. So
I like how you led with compromise. You always shoehorn that in, and I feel like I always forget about it. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because I think that's really what's important. If you're new to adventure riding or you want to get into it, and even if you've been in it for a while and you've not really thought about it, I think that that's the biggest thing. Is when I talk about, like I said, what's your rider style, what's your philosophy on motorcycles matters because in this space, compromise is everything. That if you make a choice that leans away from your philosophy and taste, you're going to get the opposite end of the coin of all those compromises, and you're potentially going to be unhappy or dissatisfied or whatever it is.
Yep. So. It's just like the guys that buy the Jeeps, right? And you go buy a Jeep and you're like, this is going to be fantastic. I just bought a Jeep. This is not a slight towards Jeep owners. This is just, all of a sudden you want to make it a little bit more off-road, and you want to make it a little bit more off-roady. And then you want to make it a little bit more off-roady, and pretty soon you're like driving a trail vehicle that's no fun at all to drive on the street. Like, you basically can't go get groceries in it because you've built a rock crawler, And so being realistic with what you're going to do, to your point, if you're going to stray really far away from that idea or goal, you're not going to end up enjoying yourself. So, you got to be realistic about it.
I wrote an article forever ago, and it's a little bit satire and a little bit real, called "The 13 Motorcyclists That You Will Meet," and I think it's relevant in this space. If you're listening to this episode, I assume you're like, "Hey, what are some things I need to think about before buying another bike or buying my first bike?" I think it's also important to understand what you like about motorcycles. I think Mark, for the most part, just described more or less what I like about adventure bikes, and I think we're in the same space. I do ride more pavement than off-road, despite my taste in off-road. It's just a location thing, and among other things. But for some people, a motorcycle's art, right? Like, they just buy it because they want to buy stuff and put it on it and make it look a certain way, and they enjoy it, and they go get another one. I think for some people, they just buy a new bike every 2 years. Like, that's just their thing. They're just trying on something new. I will say this podcast is marginally less for those people, but hopefully they can still get some value out of it. But yeah, if you're the kind of person who just buys a new bike every 2 years, then, you just want to get the experience. That's fine. For you and I think motorcycles are tools, be it commuting, adventuring, camping, relax, whatever it is, learning new skills, that kind of thing. Yeah, so there's a whole thing about artwork and some other stuff in there, but I wanted to kind of bring that out there, like, hey, if this is a passion and what you like to do on the weekends, and you don't want to have to buy a bike and then turn around and spend a bunch of money and then buy another one and so on and so forth, I wanted to kind of like talk about that on the front end, and that's why I wanted to talk about philosophy and what you want out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just to lead off on that, one more idea is, we do ride a lot of street, you and I, but then when we do get to the off-road stuff, like I want to ride some
Yeah.
off-road, like I don't necessarily just go looking for gravel roads all the time. So it does need to perform in both places. So that word compromise can't be understated or underused.
Yeah, I want to talk a lot about that in on-road, off-road, seat height,
Yeah.
and weight. Like all that stuff really matters.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some people approach this same discussion about displacement and whatnot, and I think that's true. I mean, we can talk about that creature comforts. That's kind of the same thing. But no, that's exactly it. Is that when you want to ride like an outlaw on-road and off-road, it it's not that it makes your choices really thin, but I mean it is difficult to live in both places at once. That's for sure.
Yep, no doubt. What were you kind of looking for when you chose your T7? It was basically about the same kind of thing, or what was your primary driving force in getting that bike?
I guess this is relevant for the listeners before we kind of unpack more of the technical details. I mean, I was adventure riding on a Triumph Scrambler for Lord. I mean, I started doing that in 2016. So I bought that new Tenere in 2024. So I had been living with essentially 6 inches of suspension travel on adventure rides for a very, very long time. Which is a good argument for, hey, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to buy the best. It still does the job, but it comes with
Yep.
limitations. So to me, it was, I want more, we'll say off-road performance, and then I wanted some marginally better creature comforts, fairing, and some other stuff. And in my case, I'd also kind of worn out the old bike. It was like, hey, it's not that it won't go across the country. I'm a little more nervous about it at 80,000 miles than I was, a newer bike. So there's something to think
Yep.
about there.
Yeah.
And I love that engine. I guess this matters a little bit. I didn't plan on unpacking it on this show, but I guess we can. I'm a sucker for engine character. Like that is the thing that absolutely ropes me in. And so my Scrambler and the Tenere are my two favorite engines, period. Like, so I can forgive a lot of ills because I like that. And so, yeah, after I rode the FZ07, God, years ago, that was probably 2014, 2015 when I rode the FZ07. I was like, this engine's incredible. I love this. So, yeah, when they came out with Tenere, I knew I was going to do that. So,
Heck yeah, cool.
but
I like it, man. Yeah, I bet you rode that FZ7 and you're like, just make an adventure bike out of this thing. And then they did. It's like they were just waiting for you to ask them.
that is a different podcast
Yep.
because that was a very different rider back then. And ironically, I rode that at a test ride, and I was looking to ride the XSR 900 and the FJ09. So the FJ09 was what had my attention. And at the end of the day, I loved the FZ07 the most.
Nice.
And it shocked me. Like I had no idea that was going to happen. So it is interesting how taste change, and every now and then, I guess that's a good reference. We probably should have talked about it now. Like, despite what you and I say about bikes, love is in the eye of the beholder. There have been bikes I thought I would love on paper, and then I rode them and was like, I don't really like this. And then I just
Yep.
mentioned that FZ07. I rode that. I was not interested in that bike at all, and I love it to this day. And I would struggle to not park one next to the T7. 'Cause
Heck yeah.
it's a rad bike.
That's cool, man. Yep, absolutely 100% accurate.
I guess budget's a pretty a broad term.
It can be.
I'm trying to think. Right now on Marketplace, you can take home a used Royal Enfield Himalayan from anywhere from $2,500 to $2,700 right now. So you could get into adventure very affordably on the used market. And
Yeah.
what's the going rate for a new BMW 1300 GSA these days?
Oh, dude, I'm sure by the time you're done, you're $25,000 to $30,000 in the hole for that. I mean, you can get all over the place for sure. I mean, you want to go cheap, there's a way to do that. You want to drop the coin on it, that's awesome too, man. And there's a place for that. So just got to kind of ask yourself, how much am I willing to, a lot of that it depends on so many factors what you're willing to spend. I mean, clearly you're getting a lot more things, trinkets and gee whiz bangs and levers and switches and buttons and stuff when you buy, the more expensive bike. I mean, you buy the $2,500 bike, you can just assume that's going to be a pretty bare bones thing. And there's a place for both of them. That's why they both exist at the end of the day.
You and I definitely went into this on used bikes, and I think we might do another episode on how to buy a used motorcycle. This episode, to some degree, was driven by a conversation that my buddy Logan and I are talking about, because he wants to buy an adventure bike this year. And this is a good time to buy a bike, so hopefully this episode helps people out this spring on making some decisions.
Yeah.
So you got a pretty significant discount on your 901. My gut says it was somewhere around the neighborhood of $2,500 off retail, if not more.
I think it was more than that. Yeah, the advertised price for the sale price on that bike was $13,500.
Yeah.
And now I think that was like $4,000 off or something. And now you can even, I've seen them for like another 500 less than that. So, and if you're wanting the Norden that's not the Expedition one, I've seen leftover models advertised for $89.95.
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot of motorcycle for $9,000.
Yeah, and it's
crazy.
That's why I brought it up, is that the market is in a way right now. Again, I don't want to turn the whole episode into this, but this is a good time to buy because a lot of new bikes are leftovers because the market's a little depressed right now. People are struggling to pay their bills. So if KTM especially is on discount for a whole host of reasons, we've done a show on that too. In the used market is starting to come down some, but at the same time, if you want something like the new 390 Adventure, there's more out there than there were. But if you have a bike that's kind of rare, I'm going to talk about like Cove 800 and some other ones. They're a little harder to find, so you're not going to get as good a deal on something like that. So trying to figure out what your budget is, and then I'm sure for everybody that's a matter of what you have in savings, whether or not you want to finance if you're going to buy a used bike or a new bike. And I didn't want to. I mean, I don't really want to get into that, although I guess it's relevant to some degree. Like, if you finance a bike that's used and only a couple years old, you're probably going to get a halfway decent interest rate. But if you want to borrow money from the bank to buy something that's, I'd say probably 4 years or older, you end up paying a higher interest rate for that. Everything that you've already mentioned about new, if you buy new, you're probably going to get dealership incentives. You may even get better interest rates purely because you bought something new and it's, quote, worth more. You have that going with you. But
my bike also came with a 5-year warranty, dude. So on top of that, some are 4 or 5. My bike had and there's reasons. It's a KTM after all. It has a 5-year warranty though. So that's more things into buying the new bike than I was looking at a used one. It didn't come with that, dude. Yeah. So, I'll take that.
Ultimately, I'm going to take that segue here in just a second. But as far as budget is concerned, just understand that there are actually some pretty decent deals on used. Although adventure is probably the only real growing adventure / dual sport is like the growing segment of motorcycles right now, whereas cruisers and other bikes are kind of down. So I'm kind of shocked by some of the, we'll call basement pricing of some of the adventure bikes. I'm like, these bikes are 12 years old and they're really not worth that. 5 years ago, they were $3,500 and now you want $6,000. I don't understand that. So some of that stuff's silly. But I think
starting to change.
Yeah, and I'm of the mindset that if you have $6,000, you have a lot of choices on used bikes.
Yes.
If you have $10,000 or are prepared to if you have saved or borrow $10,000, you've got a lot of really good choices. T7s are currently marked down below $10,000. A lot of places brand new. So I think that's a good budget if you want to get into it. But obviously, if you're a spare no expense person. Hell, some Tiger 900s are marked down, but you're still looking at, $18,000 for, Ducatis and so on, if not more. So know that. New versus used, you kind of mentioned right now. We mentioned you can get some killer deals right now on new. That's not normal. And then that 5-year warranty is interesting. That's something to think about.
Yeah, actually, it was funny because I went in there thinking it had a 4-year warranty, and I'm signing the paperwork, and she's like, yeah, and here you go, sign for the 5-year warranty. I actually had her double check. I'm like, no, it's a 4-year warranty. I'm like arguing with her for the lesser deal. And then she's like, no, look, it's 5 years. So 5-year warranty, sweet, man. I'll, with the little things that bike is kind of known to have, that was just like, a warm embrace, So I definitely took that.
I bought a new car in, I think it was 22, if I remember correctly. And the car market was garbage. Like it was just nothing but trash was laying around. So it was a real crapshoot. If you bought a used car, you were paying too much, and reliability was questionable to say the least. I don't think that's what the bike market is right now, but if you're looking at used bikes right now, if you know anyone who knows anything about bikes and you do not, try to bring them with you. Again, I don't want to do a whole episode about buying used bikes because there are some absolutely killer deals out there, very clean machines. At the same time, I do feel like some people who are really hard up are trying to offload whatever crap they have. So you do need to be careful there. I'm just saying that's a con versus buying new. Like buying new means you don't get somebody else's problems. Buying used at this moment means you could probably save a pile of money, but you need to be a little smart right now because it's a little hard to discriminate between somebody who's desperate to pay their bills and is offloading something new and someone who is a shyster, frankly, who's got an engine that's a piece of crap and is trying to offload it before anybody finds out.
Yeah, it's when I decided to buy the Husky, I definitely decided I was buying new over used just because, again, the warranty, but then also to what you were saying, I don't want to inherit somebody else's problems, especially on a bike like this. Like I don't, this day's riding is precious time. So to go in there and discover, oh, I need to replace this entire back half of the wiring harness to get this bike to behave properly. Been there, done that. Not in that station of life right now. I just wanted something that's turnkey. Buying a new bike does not guarantee that, but it certainly, increases your chances.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot to consider, and we're going to unpack some of that. I also think if you buy a new bike and you're the kind of person that doesn't want to scratch it, there are advantages to buying used, right? Like it doesn't you don't ever remember what it looked like when it was brand new. It kind of came with a few scratches on it already, perhaps.
Yep.
So there's a little less emotional attachment to that. But if you're new to the adventure space, as we have talked about in other episodes, you're gonna drop this bike. It's about guaranteed. So to some degree, you can save some money and some, emotional scars if you buy a used bike. There's also something to that.
That's definitely true, no doubt about it, man. And sometimes, we've talked before about used bikes coming with, hard parts and things on it that you may or may not want. And if you find the bike that has the stuff on it that you want, that can be a bonus because you can save some serious money that way. When you're buying a new bike, chances are you're buying new accessories too. So it's to be considered.
Yeah, like I said, right now is a weird time. There's deals on both ends of the spectrum, and there are still, depending on if you want something that not a lot of people have or everybody wants it, you're going to end up paying, freight and setup and dealer fees and all that other stuff as well. So know that on the front end. Again, I don't want to do a big episode about that, but I do think we're going to do that here pretty soon, just because of what we're talking about right now. I'm trying to think. I mean, like the newer bikes are going to have, if you like techno features, which we'll go through here in a few, you're more likely to get some of that stuff, cruise control, rider modes, all that good stuff, flashy screens. Older bikes are obviously not going to have some of that stuff, although that's the other end, right? If you don't like, we'll call it techno nanny stuff on your motorcycle, there's a huge advantage to buying a used KLR because there's none of that.
Dude, again, not to make this the 901 episode, but this bike has a third O2 sensor on it. So they changed it in 2024. I didn't know this, right? It's not one of those things you necessarily know before you buy the bike, right? So for me, if I want to decat this bike, it's like $1,000 to decat it properly without throwing a code because you pulled that third O2 sensor out, which actually ends up disabling your cruise control, right? So you buy
Weird
a 23
how those two things are linked all of a sudden.
Yep, it's bizarre, right?
Yeah.
You buy a 23 and earlier, you decat it is, lickety split like any other bike you've ever decatted. But you can do this one, but it's a process to do it. So there's little things that they sneak in, I would suggest whether you're buying new or used, just do as much research on the bike as you can. Visit some of these forums, learn about it, learn about the little differences between model years, because it does seem like most bikes, KTM especially is notorious for it, they change something every year. Just one little thing. It could be a steering head bearing. It could be, a water pump seal. It could be, it could be any number of things. It could be the stupid third O2. I've never even heard of that before. And when I learned about it, I was like, you've got to be shitting me. But there it is.
Somebody check us on that. I believe that you're correct, but I want to make sure that we're 100% accurate. Like, yeah, if the third 202 sensor knocks out your cruise control, that sounded like a reason to make people spend money to me. But anyway,
I guarantee you that's the case. Yeah, man, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Do we miss anything on advantages, disadvantages of new versus used?
Of course we did, but I can't think of what it is right now. So somebody will let you know. Email Drew.
That's right. motoadvr@gmail.com.
Why can I never get your email address right, by the way?
You'd think it would be on the wall behind me or anything.
You'd think.
ADVR. On-road versus off-road preference.
It's a tough one right here.
And this is it's part of the philosophy thing, and definitely when I have this discussion with people that are thinking about bikes and ask me my opinion because I may have ridden it or whatever, it's one of those things where if money's no object, we all want 200% more motorcycle than we currently have, right? I want all the suspension and I want all the power and this, that, and the other. But the reality is, if you don't ride off-road a lot now, and obviously if you don't ride off-road at all now, you probably aren't going to ride off-road as much as you think you are unless you make certain choices. Now, if we're going to start debating dual sport and dirt bike, a whole different discussion. But I'm talking about in the adventure space. So you're either coming from a dirt bike and you're going into adventure, or you're coming from a street bike and you're going into adventure, or you've already been in the adventure space. Even if you're riding adventure now, are you really going to ride 50% more dirt than you currently are? Because to me, it has a lot to do with that. You said it already. Like, where you live usually has a huge impact on how much dirt you could possibly ride.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the way. I mean, at the end of the day, dude, I love to ride the dirt, and I used to live 5 minutes from the dirt, literally. I'm not even kidding. And then I could ride the tri-state area with minimal pavement. I'm not in that position anymore. I can either take some back roads for 30 or 40 minutes, or I can jump on, a 4-lane, actually 6-lane now. They just expanded it, highway. So my bike has to be good on the street because I'm not trailing it, especially for 30 minutes to get to where I want to go to ride. So it's gotta be good, on the street, and it's gotta be relatively comfortable touring. I'm a one bike guy, so I don't have, a touring bike, an adventure bike, a dual sport bike, a dirt bike, a trials bike. I don't have any of that. My bike does all those duties, right? So you've got to be honest with yourself. That's the biggest takeaway from this particular little chapter that we're talking about right here. Don't look at, oh man, I want that rally bike because I want to ride like a rally. You might live an hour away from it. Dude, like if I lived where you are when I came to visit you and you got to ride all that street to get to anything good.
It's an hour and a half.
Yeah, dude, it made me feel extremely lucky to only have to do a half hour, dude. I used to bitch about a half hour, and I haven't since I visited you in Ohio. So it's like, you got to ask yourself, like, what am I really going to do here, And you may or may not make the right decision with that. But, luckily with adventure bikes, there's things you can do to level out the playing field on either end of that. But it's a huge question, wouldn't you say?
I think so. There's something to think about. There's some folks are listening who they have like time off. They're going to take leave. They've saved up a bunch of money, and I'm not going to say quit their job, but they're going to take a few months and travel. They might be retiring. That is a different discussion, right? Like you're now coming into a segment, and you're going to probably totally unpack a brand new style of riding. And I'm happy for that. And this particular chapter probably doesn't apply to you the same way because you really are going into a new space. For a lot of us, especially if you work a full-time job, Lord help you if you have kids, like all those things like really limit the amount of time that you ride. So it's hard to go from riding a street bike to suddenly, spending 50% of your miles off-road, unless you are blessed to live in a place that just happens to have a whole lot of off-road stuff. I suppose it's possible folks on the west coast of the United States might be listening, or even in other countries that have more access to green lanes and whatnot. So in your case, yes, it's going to blow up 50%. But for folks listening in the Midwest, anybody from Appalachia here, like it's a little work sometimes to find the off-road opportunities. So if you're going from I think of like a touring bike or a sport touring bike to suddenly deciding that you want to CRF 300L because you're going to ride off road 70% of the time. I hope that's the case. I don't witness those types of changes unless it involves trailers, OHV clubs, and things like that. Like that's tough. And that is actually the next chapter I want to unpack. But first, I'm just saying, like, we have to kind of manage expectations is probably the best way to say that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of my points was that there's things that you can do on either end of that spectrum. Like, you can look at an adventure bike. The T7 is a great example of this. You can look at the T7, and now Yamaha's even looking at the T7 this way, to be honest with you. And as I've always looked at it as a blank canvas. So you can take that T7 and you can make it the most badass off-road, capable adventure bike that you possibly can. Take the suspension, the knobbies, minimize the weight, pull the crash bars, all that good stuff. Or you can go the other route, get a bigger gas tank, put some street rubbers on there, add some luggage. You can make it a really good touring bike.
Yeah.
Throw some highway pegs on it, whatever, more comfortable seat. The list goes on, right? So just because you bought a bike and you go, oh yeah, I bought it because I want to do this, you can set it up to go the other direction. I mean, supermoto wheels exist for a reason, right? I mean, who hasn't thought of taking their adventure bike with a 2118 setup and go, I want some 17-inch hoops on this joker and use it, for road duty. So they're extremely versatile and very forgiving, but you'll save yourself a lot of grief and heartache at the end of the day if you're honest with yourself when you're shopping.
Yeah, I say all that to say that, like, where you're happy now, and we want you to come into the adventure space or spend more time there, and I'm trying to help facilitate that. At the same time, it's like it's hard for most of us to change dramatically. Part of that skill set, which is not this podcast, but it's like, hey, it takes talent to learn how to ride off road. I shouldn't say that. It takes practice to learn how to ride off road, and not bin your $15,000 motorcycle. Yeah, and location. That's such a driving force behind it. And to some degree, if you're not a navigation nerd, just finding people to show you where to ride it is actually a huge barrier to entry. Even if you live close to it, you may not know that yet. Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, hey, if you're going to buy a bike, and I get it, if it's your forever bike and that's your plan, it makes sense. But for most people, and even you and I are the same, right? 5 or 6 years might be a long time with a bike. I mean, I have one now that I have had. This year will be a decade, but like for a lot of people, 5 or 6 years is a pretty long time with one motorcycle. So you're likely to change your bike right about the time you finally start expanding into more time off road, or buy a different bike to go next to it.
5 or 6 years is about when I start getting bored with my current bike. My 1090 was a 2019. I sold it in 2025 and bought the 901. I about get bored at about that time. And it's not because I didn't like that bike or the bike before that I've actually loved almost every motorcycle I've ever owned. Just get time to try something new,
I keep doing that. It's another episode as well, and I want to do another one. Like, life is about seasons. And I think that's it. It's 5 or 6 years on one motorcycle. It's not necessarily that your taste has changed, but some of the things in your life has changed, which means you're evolving the motorcycle. In your case, you're like, I don't need this much power, and I definitely don't need this much weight. I would like a smaller bike, and that was kind of a deciding factor in that space. So,
totally, man. Yeah, totally. A couple more creature comforts,
Definitely that. I want to skip seat height. Not skip. I want to do seat height later, but I think we should talk about touring versus day tripping versus trailering, because I think it ties in really well with the on-road, off-road a lot better than
absolutely agree.
It's funny because you and I just did that episode about best destinations on the East Coast, and to some degree, I kind of feel like I'm not the long-distance touring guy, but I feel like slightly more the pavement guy than you.
I think you might be, but I would also argue that I'm a bit of a chameleon. So, if I've got the right crew, dude, I want to go off road and I want to find the 3Rs, the roots, the rocks, the ruts all day. Like that's what I love.
Right.
But there's plenty of times where I'm with my dad or I'm with a buddy that's on a road bike or whatever. And we stay on the street all day too. I would say that you came from a street background, and I came from a dirt bike background.
That makes sense.
So that's where the differences are going to be.
Yeah. And I feel bad because I actually haven't set up to this point. Someone listening right now might be shopping for adventure bikes that actually doesn't want to ride off-road at all, and that's actually one of the biggest reasons why I put adventure touring on here as like the lead part of this discussion that we're having right this second, because there's a lot of incredible bikes. I think of you and I've talked about Tiger 1050 before. KTM 1290 has a, we'll call it an S model, Tiger Roadies. Like there's a whole bunch of
The Versys.
the new X. What is the current Tiger now? Tiger GT. Yeah, great.
I cannot keep track of that.
Good catch about that. All that to say is, for listeners' benefit, like there's a lot of dual 17-inch, front wheel, rear wheel adventure bikes out there that are awesome and wonderful touring bikes. So if that's your jam, that's one end of the spectrum, and there's a lot to choose from in that space.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, dude, if you never leave the pavement on an adventure bike, dude, there's so much going for that. Their upright seating position, there's a reason sport touring is dead because adventure bikes killed it. And I mean, it's just true.
Yeah.
I love a sport touring bike, dude. But the truth is a GS will do everything that, a Concourse 14 will do. I mean, plus when you get at the end of the day and you want to go down that little gravel road and find you a camping spot, you can arguably do it a little bit easier. So I mean, there's just so many things to street riding only on an adventure bike that are huge benefits. Huge benefits.
I don't want to turn this into like what's the best bike. I do think we might do that a little bit at the end, like choose your weapon kind of thing. But I think of the new Tiger 850. Anyone who's going to find an old Tiger XR, or just what they called the Tiger Roadie back in the day.
Yep.
Mag wheels, 1917, 6+ inches of suspension travel. They're probably upwards of 8 on those bikes. I forget what they were back then, but it's like, they are going to soak up every pothole on the way to work. You don't really care how bad the pavement is compared to what it was like on a 5-inch travel, FZ07 or whatever else it is. They turn great, and touching the ground's not quite as tough. A lot of those bikes are a lot lower than the traditional 21-inch front rim style adventure bikes. So no, we're on the same page. I mean, you've talked about before. I've had the Tiger 1050 kind of like on my wish list. Like if I find one that's in good shape and it's cheap enough, I'm gonna have a hard time not getting one for that very reason.
Dude. I mean the V-Strom 1000s. I mean there's a lot of options out there. And really that Tiger 1050 though, like, man, we just have to toot that bike's horn because that bike and the Versys, they were like that red Versys 650 when Kawasaki came out with that thing. Those two bikes were ahead of their time. Now there's entire segments of just adventure touring bikes. Those bikes, when I worked at the Triumph dealer when that 1050 came out, I've said it before, we couldn't sell it. Like nobody knew what to do with it. It was a Tiger, but nobody'd seen a road only Tiger, so that didn't make any sense, but it wasn't a Sprint. So what is this? Who's this customer that's buying this? And now there's just a smorgasbord of customers that are buying that kind of bike. So
I mean, man. It gave birth to the Tiger 660 and the Tiger 800 now that they have. There's a bunch in there about 1200 whatnot, but those two bikes in particular now, it's interesting how those are options. I would not be surprised to see whatever iteration happens with that old 1050 engine give birth to the 800 is going to grow to a 900, which is going to grow to a 950. Like that's going to happen in the next 5 years. And so we're going to see 1000cc Tiger Roadie come back in here. Well, I should say Tiger Adventure Tourer come back in.
Yeah, totally, man.
So it'll be interesting. The other side, and I think not the other side, there's touring like over long distance. We talked about that before. Folks are going to want to buy an adventure bike and go on long trips and do a lot of like moto camping style weekends and whatnot. We're covering some of the bikes and stuff that people want with those. And I guess let's expand that first before I get into day tripping and trailering, what the pros and cons are. So what do you think about some of the accoutrements to some degree or things to consider if you want to like long distance travel on an adventure bike?
Well, if you want a long distance travel on an adventure bike, wind protection, protection from the elements, those are pretty high on the list. Range is probably pretty high on the list. Having a good big gas tank, seat comfort ergonomics, sitting ergonomics, and paying attention to the bend of your knee, the bend of your ankle, reach to the handlebars. That Tiger 800 I had was a great example of a bike that had some freaking weird ergonomics straight out of the gate. It was made for, like, I swear to God, Drew, it was made for a gorilla. You had to have extremely short legs, but extremely long arms because the reach from the seat to the bars was insane. But the pegs, my knee, my hip, my knee, and my ankle were all at full lock all the time sitting on that bike till I changed it. So luggage carrying capabilities. Couple things that are kind of creature comforty, but in 2026, I don't know anybody that wants to tour on a bike without cruise control.
Yeah.
So do you have electronic cruise?
We
Tubeless wheels.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of the technology pros and cons. I think it also makes sense that everything you're talking about probably means if you're into more touring, less off-road, you're probably going to be comfortable with a heavier bike, probably comfortable spending more money because they do have all the creature comforts and whatnot on there.
So, well, you're less likely to drop it and destroy it on a rock.
Yeah. There's an argument about having a larger displacement because you're going to spend more time on the highway. So to kind of, we'll say, save revolutions on the engine to some degree, like having a bigger engine means you don't stress it out quite as much. You're not holding it full lock for hours on end.
Yeah, you get plenty of passing power.
Yeah, that stuff makes sense too. No, I think those are considerations that people that lean touring probably need to think about.
Yeah.
I'm the day tripper, so it's a very different type discussion. So we'll do day tripper, and then I guess we'll kind of dip into trailering bikes places. As you said, I ride from home to wherever I'm going to go most of the time. My bikes do go on trailers. In fact, I think it's going on a trailer tomorrow. But normally, I'm riding from the house, so that it means that I need more street prowess. I shamelessly will ride a 250 from my house to all these places, but there's no doubt that having an adventure bike with a middleweight 650, 750 cc engine makes it a little bit more comfortable, a little more wind protection.
Yeah.
But I like a lighter bike and more affordable bike because I am going to ride off-road when I get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. And there's a couple bikes that bridge that gap, and that's where I feel I got. But, the day tripper, I think if I have no data, this is a total seat of my pants thing. I bet most people are day trippers.
That's my gut from, it's funny because it came up on another podcast somebody was talking about the other day. It might have been the Lowdown Show, I forget. But more or less said that it felt like when the adventure space kind of first became popular, everybody was trying to do these big long trips and BDRs and all other stuff. But it's like at this stage, BDRX, and obviously we've talked about Southern High Adventure Loop, the BRAP, all this stuff. Like for the most part, a lot of us are like, I've only got this weekend to do something. So it's like I'm never really that far from home unless I fly and ride or we trailer many miles, and I want to say we'll unpack that next. But no, I'm in the same way. I do think for the most part that we're riding adventure, but we're sleeping in our own bed most of the nights.
Yeah, most of the time. Matter of fact, that'd be an awesome pull for you to do for this episode. Are you the long distance guy? Are you the world traveler? Or are you the day tripper, maybe a long weekend, Or are you taking off for, I would say, more than 2 weeks, I mean, everybody gets, like most people, I try to take a week every year and do a long trip, but that's all I get. I mean, a week, and I'm lucky to have that week. You know,
I think it makes sense we should have people leave the comments, like when we go through the chapters, like which one of these people are you, right? So are you the day tripper? Are you the overland person? Like what's most important? Budget?
Yeah, you trailering.
Yeah, what is it about buying an adventure bike? What are your key criteria that you're looking for?
Yeah,
so that's a good one.
Or you just want to look at something in your garage and make it look cool, and that's cool too.
Yep, no, it's definitely a huge part of that. Yeah, I just say that if you really don't have a long distance to go, people are going to tell you, well, you need more bike or you need this, that, and the other. And I'm like, honestly, if you're mostly riding on the weekends, man, you can make some pretty minor, what do you call it?
Adjustments.
Yeah, adjustments or compromises. You can make some minor compromises that everyone thinks are extreme, but it's like, honestly, you're going home tomorrow night at the, at the latest. So you can get away with a smaller bike or a more aggressive bike or a marginally less comfortable seat and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
People make a big deal, like you said before, about having huge gas tanks. And it's like, honestly, here on the East Coast, for the most part, as long as you got 130 miles worth of range, that's usually more than enough. It's, 2 hours of riding and go take a break. It's not a big deal.
It's almost like the ultimate freedom to be in this category because you don't need all the stuff. Like, honestly, you can get away with a backpack to carry all your crap in. I mean, it's nice to have a tail bag or a tank bag maybe or whatever, but throw all your crap in a backpack and throw a hydration bladder in there and, go to town, man. Go crazy because you're going to stay in a hotel that night or whatever. Dude, I just bought some luggage for my bike that I spent like $350 on it because I might use it twice a year.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't need $1,200 of luggage sitting around here for that small amount of use. Yeah. So, it is kind of, I never thought about it before we started talking about this, but it is kind of the ultimate freedom to be in that day tripper category.
And I think of, and I already mentioned my 250, but in the adventure category, I think 300L Rally, Ibex 450 and Himalayan 450. Like, a lot of people are going to be like, well, I need more power and I'm going to ride from the house, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, honestly, it's amazing that you can find a few better back roads. You can find some twistier stuff. You don't miss the power as much. And then when you're off road, you don't miss the weight. And it's like when you're day tripping, it's like, I'm on the highway, but I'm only on there for an hour, maybe two. It's really not that big a deal. And Himalayan 450 is it's not strung out doing that. So you want that, and all of us love the power, but it opens up that you can now do more aggressive off-road stuff because you don't actually need all of the creature comforts because you're just not doing it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it, dude. That's right.
Yeah. So I guess taking that a step further and actually in both directions, I find lots of people are using a trailer to take their adventure bike. Like, even if they're just riding for the day, they just bring the trailer.
It's not uncommon to see a GS on a trailer now. And 25 years ago when I started doing this, dude, if you put a GS on a trailer, someone might light that thing on fire, dude. It was like, the sticker was always like, if this bike is on a trailer, it's, call 911 or something. Yeah, something like that, and it's common actually to see guys. There's a lot of guys that will flog a GS off road. Right. And they put it on the trailer and bring it to where they're going. And then, I don't want to burn the knobbies up, which is whatever. That's my pet peeve. That's not my thing. But it's a thing for other people.
That's 100% it. If you have a friend and this is your riding buddy, or you think it's going to be your riding buddy, or you have a truck or you have a trailer already, like, it's much more popular now for everybody to be like, okay, we're going to meet at this campground and we're going to stay here all weekend. And so everybody just puts the bike on a trailer and just goes. And they think, to some degree, it's like if something bad happens, then I can just put it back on the trailer. I don't have to tow as far. I know I have a ride home. I also think it opens doors that it's very much like, hey, if you want to quote adventure ride and live off the bike and do whatever, but you want like maximum off-road performance, then if you trailer there, you've eliminated all of the highway discussion. Because I do think for me, we know, like I said, to get to park where you and I went to ride is almost 2 hours to park.
Yeah, I can't imagine most people are riding for an hour of, I didn't consider it boring when I was with you, but I suppose if you lived there, you might, when you had to do it all the time. Most people are going to trailer from where you are, But it definitely means, right? Like, now we're starting to have a discussion about, is the 690 an adventure bike, right? Like, people can start getting lighter and lighter bikes. Yeah. And then the opposite end of the spectrum is people, actually, I think Andy's on the show frequently. Andy wants to ride his T7 on the scariest stuff he can possibly find, and they just put it in the back of the RV and go to wherever that place is and live out of the RV for the weekend. And the bike really doesn't do a lot of pavement miles, but it's a big adventure bike that doesn't really, get on the highway. You already mentioned tires. That's a huge piece of that too. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's things to think about. Like, are you going to trailer most places, and it totally changes what bike really fits that. Whereas you and I don't even have a truck nor a trailer. So if I'm on a trailer like tomorrow, I have to ride half an
Borrow
hour to
one.
meet someone. Then my bike goes on trailer, and then I go somewhere, right? So it's like I still have to ride
It's
places.
more work than it's worth almost, you know? And
Well, I guess since we've already brought it up, tomorrow morning is probably going to be 38 degrees,
yep.
but it's going to be 60 in the afternoon. So
Yep.
it extends the season in my case, that it's like, hey, I get to ride in February and in December if I'll
Heck
trail
yeah.
it around somewhere. And it's like, okay, can I survive 45 minutes on the highway on my little 250 at 40 degrees and then ride in the truck for 2 hours until it's warm? Like, okay, yeah, it's fine. We can do that, right? And that's what I'm saying is it changes what
Yep.
bike fits you. So if you're worried about a lot of weight, you can buy a small bike and trailer. And if you're just worried about tearing up knobbies and other whatnot. So, but yeah, it's a very popular thing, but was saying that's a criteria we got to make a choice about.
Totally, man. There's plenty of times I always, on this podcast, I've historically given people a hard time for trailering, and I always will. But clearly, there are times when I put my bike in a trailer as well. And there's times I put it in my van to drive up to your house because I knew I wouldn't get there till 1 in the morning or whatever time it was. I'm not riding my bike on the interstate in unfamiliar territory at 1 in the morning. And if I don't have to, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Be in a comfortable vehicle with some coffee and stuff, you know what I mean? So I do enjoy sadistically doing that stuff, but there's a time and a place for it also. I got a kid to think about now too, so that has to factor in. So
I should have led with this, but ultimately, like, this spectrum matters because the longer you're going to be on the bike, the more that people are going to be worried about pavement prowess, creature comforts, and where to put their crap, which usually means you're going to spend less time off-road.
yeah,
Whereas the other end of the spectrum is the longer that you're going to live off the bike, if at all, if you're just riding for the day, then that means you can get much more off-road prowess, and your street comfort really, it stops mattering. Especially, like I said, if you're just riding for today and you're coming back to camp every day and you trailer, it's like, who cares like how uncomfortable the pavement is? It'll be over in a few hours. It's not a big deal.
yeah,
Whereas
totally.
you can get much better off-road performance and less weight, and ideally not hurt so much when you have to pick up the bike.
Yep.
Which is a great segue. Oh wait, let's do weight. Yes, let's do weight, and then let's do seat height. Let's do
You
that.
just segued yourself. That's amazing.
Segued. So, what are pros and cons to a heavy bike?
Well, I will say this. Everybody gets wrapped up in, I need less weight. I need less weight. My adventure bike needs to weigh 400 pounds or the world is going to stop the direction of travel that it's currently being pulled in, and it's going to reverse time. Dude, when you're touring and you're on the street and you're going down the freeway or whatever, I don't mind a little extra girth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That weight is actually a benefit when you're doing something like that because you don't get blown all over the road.
Yeah.
When you're on a smaller, lighter weight bike, oh man, it can just wear you out when you're doing that kind of riding. You feel me?
Yeah, I mean, the usually smaller bikes usually means smaller cockpit in addition to when a semi passes you and the blast comes off the front hood and the whole bike just starts to like fishtail and whatnot. And when I ride my 250, my WR has more horsepower than most other 250s I've been on that are, we'll say, dual sports, but
Bragger.
you have to draft cars to pass and things like that as well, right? And like you said, anytime something else passes you, like, it changes things. No, I agree completely that there's something to, especially crossing long straight roads on an extremely windy day. You're very thankful for a fat bike.
Oh yeah, it's a huge benefit. I mean, on the road and touring, it's a huge benefit. Now when you're opposite of that, when you're in the dirt, I mean, obviously it doesn't even need to be said that the less weight is better. But again, when you're in the middle ground, like we've kind of decided most people are, that's where things get to be funny.
Yeah.
Because again, the word compromise comes up, right? So it's like, oh, I've got this heavy bike. This is kind of quite a bit to deal with here on the dirt, or man, my bike's really lightweight. Oh, this is kind of strange when I'm riding an hour from my house in Dayton over to Kentucky, So I think weight's a huge thing in that department.
It's gotten so much better in recent years. I mean, I think the GS now is down to 560.
Yeah, lost weight.
Yeah,
it's like 30 pounds lighter than the outgoing version.
Yeah, like they've done a lot to really reduce weight on that. I think with it, and it solidifies your point. I mean, the Goldwing. God, I forget what year now they did a new Goldwing. Let's call it 2020-ish. I forget what it was.
Let's call it that.
Yeah, when the new Goldwing came out, everybody complained because the gas tank wasn't as big and the top box wouldn't hold 2 helmets and whatnot. And I think that was the indication that the average American motorcyclist doesn't go on the long trips like they used to. And I think the adventure bike situation is the same. Like everybody's complaining, well, the gas tanks keep getting smaller. And I'm like, well, I honestly don't think that many people really go that far away, which also makes the bike lighter because it doesn't have that extra gallon of gas. Mind you, I have extended tanks on 2 of my bikes, and you don't have to fill them up all the way if you don't want to. But it is a weight savings option. I don't know if the new GS did that or not, but many other bikes over time I have seen do that.
Well, it always cracks me up when I ride with 2 of my best buddies have GSAs, and they'll fill it up, and I'm like, they're like, I can go 800 miles between tanks. I'm like, that's great. I can go 150, and guess what? You're riding with me, so you have to stop. Yeah. You might have to fill up, but we're still stopping. Yeah. Dude. The truth of it is, for me, and I've had an 1150 GSA. I loved that bike. It's phenomenal. You could go forever before you had to stop.
Yeah.
I like stopping at 150. I generally am ready to get off and stretch a little bit. I'm generally ready to have a Snickers bar or, I quit drinking Red Bull this year, but a Red Bull. So, those are, things that you have to consider how you're riding.
You can say all that, but I know that you just want to ask awkward questions to strangers at gas stations.
That's
actually the reason that you get off the bike.
That's true, dude. I start looking at the time and the range, and I'm like, it's about time to make people feel weird. Let's get off the bike and ask them who their favorite Muppet is.
God, such inside baseball, but so true.
Well, it is true.
No, that's the case.
Yeah,
I think it's really difficult to explain how the bikes carry weight. I think everyone has talked about the GS. The engine's down low, the heads stick out to the side. That's its own problem. That's on a different episode, but it makes the center of gravity low. People talk about the KTM 890 has the low gas tank, so it makes it feel low versus the T7, which has a steel tank on top.
Yeah,
I forget, is it Cove? BMW's done it in the past where the gas tank's kind of like under the seat. So more and more people have done
KTM 690 style.
Yeah, well, that's on the back, right? But like there are multiple other adventure bikes now where the tank.
I had a 650 GS that was that way.
Yeah, they kind of do the tank under there, but not only the stat sheet's weight, which is a lot. Like at this stage, if it's a 500-pound adventure bike, they may claim it's middleweight based on engine displacement, but that's actually pretty heavy. It's more toward the upper 1200 class at this point because many of them now are under 600 pounds.
Yeah.
But how it carries its weight is every bit as important as how much it actually weighs.
Yeah.
That matters a lot. And the middleweight, like you said, I think it is the happy place now that they're a lot lighter than they used to be. I'm amazed just sitting on the T7, even though it weighs only a few pounds lighter than my Scrambler does, it just feels easier to move around most of the time.
Yeah.
Adversely, though, if you came from a street bike, or especially like a Street Naked or like a Bonneville like mine that's super low, it is going to feel heavy because they're tall. Like that's a big deal.
It's true, and it took me a long time to want to give up my V-twin for a parallel twin. A lot of reasons for that, but at the end of the day, the parallel twin platform offers some design advantages. And you can get that weight a little bit, lower. You can package it a little bit tighter. Everything on the 901 feels more compact, everything, and lower than the 1090 did. So there's some design advantages to that platform. So engine configuration would be something else you really should consider. We didn't really, talk about that, but that's a huge thing.
I need to do some homework on that because that's, I mean, I already talked about at the beginning of the show. Like engines are what I love about motorcycles. And if I could wax poetic about all the different types, I will definitely try that. But
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
you. Go
you're
ahead.
good. The other thing was only that when it comes to weight, especially if you're moving into this segment, I do feel like lighter is better. Now, I don't want anybody to go out and buy a 300 and just be mad and turn around and sell it in 2 years. There's a learning curve to the off-road side of it, I think it's a little different if you came from dirt bikes. Like I get it, like you can probably go anywhere because you have skills that most of us didn't have. But if you're coming from street bikes, I think it still pays off to buy a lighter bike because the big bikes they get away from you really quickly. I feel like that's the biggest thing is off-road. When one of the big bikes goes down, it isn't necessarily that it actually moves to the ground faster. It's just the moment that it loses traction to the moment you find yourself on the ground, that is extremely rapid because it's very difficult to control, especially if you're not from a dirt bike background.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. My 1090 threw me on the ground at the rally that shall not be named, and I was on the ground before I even knew I was going to hit the ground. And that's not normal for me. So when it happened, I was like, damn.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thrown on the ground by my T7 in the exact same rally that you mentioned, and it snuck up on me at equal speed. And so it is. It is just one of those things that if you're new to the space, I don't want to sound like echoing everyone else, but no, seriously, like lighter is better in the beginning. You'll be more comfortable. When the bike's doing a bunch of weird stuff that you're not used to, it's going to be less alarming and less likely to throw you on the ground. And in the event that it does, it's much less of an event to pick it back up and dust yourself off and just keep going. The big bikes have a habit of really taking the wind out of your sails. And in my case, I've been stuck under a couple of them, and that's not fun either.
It's not a good time to be stuck under a bike ever.
I think that that's my usual buy a dual sport if it's your first time, but we won't beat that up. Real quick, let's give a shout out to our sponsors. This episode is fueled by Ride Northern Kentucky and Walton, your home for Indian, KTM, Royal Enfield, and more. If you haven't heard the GM Mike on episode 61, go back and get a listen and get a full podcast tour of the dealership. Serving Northern Kentucky and Greater Cincinnati, you can call or text them at 859-534-2240 or stop by the shop on Dixie Highway. Mention Moto Adventure Unscripted at the counter to snag 15% discount on parts and accessories between now and April. 859-534-2240. Now, back to the show. So that was weight class. Let's finally circle back to seat height.
Dun, dun, dun.
What's your inseam?
33.
Okay.
Yeah, which makes it incredibly difficult to find pants, by the way.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. We could, and I mean, we have time, but how the seat is shaped is every bit as important as how tall it actually is.
Absolutely.
And how soft is the suspension? Because I think a lot of people, I was thinking of my 250L. When I had the 250L, everybody walked up to it and was like, it's just so tall. And then as soon as they sat on it, they were completely flat-footed. I'm like, yeah, it's really soft. Like it's not a big deal. So there's much to talk about with regard to seat height. For you, when has the last time seat height been an issue?
When I sold my 1090, it was an issue.
Be more specific.
Yeah, so it off-road is where seat height makes a big difference to me, dude. There began to be too many times where I would dab my foot off-road and found nothing but air. No ground under. And like I'm a pretty tall guy. I'm 6'3". I mean, I say I'm a 33 inseam. I usually buy a 34 pants. So, that bike was just combined with the top heavy feel of it, with the seat height, it began to be a problem for me. The 901 with the seat at the high position, it's pretty dang tall too.
Yeah.
I'm rocking it at the low position. So my whole life, I've been like, I've had this, lifelong theory of I'm tall.
Right.
The height doesn't matter. But now I'm like, I'm creeping up on 48 years old. I don't ride as much as I used to. I'm like, I think I'll take every advantage I can get. So I'm like buying knobbier tires than I used to buy. I'm thinking about seat height, weight distribution. These are things I'd never considered even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I sold my 1090, that was a contributing factor to the sale of that motorcycle.
I distinctly remember you being stuck with that tall seat early last year. So yeah.
Oh, when you and I rode?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
In the peanut butter.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't because I felt like, again, it wasn't just the height; it was the weight and the height. And I was trying to turn around on a muddy road with you, and I couldn't freaking get it spun around because it was just thick, soupy mud, and I was afraid if I leaned it too far, I would just drop it, And it wasn't. That was like straight away too. So I was like, "What the crap is this?" On the 901, I think it'd be a different story.
Yeah,
so.
it's a more diverse topic, I think, than people want to talk about now.
Yeah, I agree.
Adventure bike seats are tall, but there are options, and we've discussed some of them. At the same time, if you're really dedicated and you're gonna, buy a dual sport and practice on it and X, Y, and Z, seat height's less of an issue. But I like how you already talked about it. Like, if you don't have time to ride the bike and dedicate time to fitness and practice and all that other stuff, seat height rapidly shows up as being a problem. So it's definitely something to shop for. I go back to, you might want 12 inches of suspension travel, but if you're not really riding that kind of stuff, you don't necessarily need all that performance, and you can get a lower seat height and just enjoy the easier off-road stuff. I say easier, I mean like your level of comfort. You can just be comfortable off-road because you're not worried about putting a foot down and not finding anything, and you don't get stuck as often. It's easier to pick up the bike usually.
Well, and there's plenty of people that are shorter with shorter inseams that can ride the crap out of an adventure bike that's taller. Like, I get it. Yeah. I know those people. Like, they're amazing. That's fine. But generally speaking, like, most of us are mere mortals, and it's nice to be able to put, dude, when I bought the on the 1090, even at my height, when I came to a red light, I could put like 1 foot down. Like, that was it. And with the 901, I can flat foot it.
Right.
Even with it being at the tall position, that's a huge, like, I'm never like, you got to flat foot your bike, but it is confidence inspiring. I mean, let's be honest here,
I think the industry is getting away from it some. Like, we've started to figure out how we can put 9 inches of suspension travel and not have to have a 38-inch seat height.
Yeah.
Like, that's working its way through there. That's a whole other discussion about chassis design and whatnot. But nowadays, you can still get Tiger. There was a Tiger 800 low back in the day. They had the XR low and all that other stuff. So there's multiple models that they're now selling a low version. I mean, now you can buy dual sports and low versions. They're actually making those models specific to the dealers. So they're already an inch lower than what the regular height is.
Nice.
For, I would say, lots of people who have a short inseam, usually there's a weight associated with that, and they're probably going to have suspension work done anyway. So don't feel like you can't have that done. If you're used to having that done, come on into the adventure space and have it done as well. Like, there, again, lots of episodes out there on the internet already about having your suspension done and spending the money because you'll be happier with your bike, and Andy's talked about on the show, among others. So there's that whole thing. And I think same thing. People are going to shame you because you bought a lowering link and you did all this other stuff. And like, time. Not all of us have the time to dedicate to the skills. So just do it and enjoy it. Don't listen to people losing their mind about that stuff.
Yeah, just make it yours. And, it's as long as you're not changing what's the word?
The way you change the, oh Lord, now I'm having podcasts.
Like the rake and trail, whatever
rake and trail,
that word is called.
Yes.
Yeah, there's like the geometry. There you go. Bam. The geometry of the motorcycle. You start messing with geometry And yeah, you're starting to mess with things, right? But as long as you stay true to the bike's design, I don't have a problem with anybody lowering a bike like that.
I saw it the other day. Alt-Rider now has lowering links for multiple bikes that are adjustable. So you
I
can
saw
actually
that too.
you can have stock. You can lower it, half an inch or whatever. So you can change it. So if you pay the extra money for that, you can lower it until you get more confident, and then you can raise it up over time to get more, ground clearance and whatnot, because you're more comfortable and you feel like you have the skills. And I think that's a pretty good option for people.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. It's cool. I saw those too. I didn't really look at them that close because it's not a product that interests me, but I should, because I think that the idea of it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we're getting back into that touring thing. I didn't plan on looking at it this way, but yeah, if you have your heart set on a bike because you love the way it looks and you just want that bike for whatever reason, yeah, there's a ton of options out there now about getting some of these things lowered for seat height. I think we'd also be remiss to mention, like, there probably are a few people who are excessively tall out there. So having a tall bike is extremely comfortable for them. And then same thing, they have the problem that you had on the Tiger, where it's actually a little cramped. So they make, you can lower pegs. That way it's, the cockpit's not as cramped because you're a tall person. So that stuff's out there too.
Yep. I feel like we've done an entire episode on that sort of thing too. But yeah, lower pegs go on every bike, including the 901 that I've got. So and it's funny because a couple millimeters makes a really big difference.
Yeah, I should talk about seats with that, because you can buy a custom seat. You can send a seat out. There's a lot of different places that'll do that for you. I can think of one in Indiana. It's actually, I think it's called Aztec, no joke. Aztec
That's awesome.
Seats in Indiana. I know some guys have gone there. Russell Daylong always comes to mind. I think down in the Southeast, I don't remember if Sargent's down there, but there's several other companies nationally.
Yeah, Corbin has a place in Daytona Beach, Seat Concepts, Renasco, there's 1,000 of them.
Yeah, so that's the out of the box option. But some of those I mentioned, like I said, Aztec, you can take your bike there.
Yeah,
and
you can do that to Corbin too.
Yeah, and they'll craft the seat to fit you, because I know some ladies who have really short inseams have had that done. So they sculpt the front of the seat right up by the tank, so when you're standing at lights or you're off road, they can reach. But then they make the back of the seat nice and wide and comfortable, so they get the best of both worlds. So those options are out there too.
The Russell Daylongs are so incredible for that, dude. And I saw a Russell Daylong for my bike just randomly come up for sale on one of the marketplace ads. That's an ugly seat, dude, but it works really well. Yeah. It's a popular GS seat.
I don't want to turn this into the motorcycle seat podcast, but
you don't.
I have 2 seats for my Tenere, and when I'm gonna go do gnarly off-road stuff and ride in a trailer, I usually put my stock seat on. That's a little skinnier versus my comfort seat, just to keep the comfort seat nice. So that's an option as well, that you can buy a low seat, keep the factory seat. Same thing, when you feel better about it, and you're going to do a long trip, and you're especially going to be on asphalt more, then you can put the thicker seat on there. But
I had 3 different seats on the 1090. I intend to buy another one for the 901 for the same reason. Just make it what you're going to do with it. They're versatile. It's a tool.
I think a lot of people do get intimidated by the seat height. I'm going to do a shout out to the Himalayan, because that particular bike, it seemed like it was hyper approachable, kind of like the 250L, that the seat height was super reasonable, and the whole bike is forgiving. I've done a whole episode on this bike, but I think of that versus the CF Moto Ibex 450, because people like to put those two side by side. And I think that's the biggest thing about that lightweight class, is that the seat on the Hemi is lower and easier to get on, and it's more comfortable. So it's very welcoming to people who are new to this space, versus the seat height intimidation that I think people get with most KTMs, and in the CF Moto Ibex is the same.
One day we will do a lightweight adventure bike segment. So. One day.
All right, the seat height podcast that I did not see coming, but
it's all right.
Let's talk about some of the features to look for depending on what your taste is. When I say features, I don't mean cruise control techie stuff. I mean like tubeless versus tubes, heated grips, adjustable screens. I'm trying to think. I mean, we could talk luggage, but we've done a whole episode on it. I want to get into that. But some of the stuff that comes stock on adventure bikes, and the things that you want, don't want, pros and cons.
Well, like one thing that will just piggy off the seat podcast episode that just happened. adjustable seat heights
Yeah.
because it's a phenomenal thing. The 901 has an adjustable seat. It's a two-piece seat. If I'm going to be on the street all day, put it in the high position, relax my knees. Off-road, I put it low. So that's one thing that I really, really like a lot. It's tough to separate features and technology for me.
Agreed. We can blend
They're
them some.
similar, they're similar. Adjustable windscreen is something else that some are electric and some are manual, but that's a nice feature too.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing, right? If you're more pavement oriented, you're going to commute to work a lot. You're going to be on the highway a lot. Definitely, some of these creature comforts make sense. But if you're the day tripper / trailer folks, like, you can spend the money on it if you want, obviously, but you might be surprised that you can save a few bucks by not buying a bike that necessarily has all those features.
Yep, no doubt. I mean, if you're gonna, be the street guy versus the off-road guy, you mentioned it for a second there, but you want tubeless wheels or you want tube-type tires, and that's a whole other podcast in and of itself also. And
I'm
I know
going to
you're
unpack a little bit of my pet peeve on this one. I'm sure you're shocked.
A little bit.
I'm going to be nice. Don't start it.
Everybody sit down while Drew goes off about bikes that have tubeless wheels. And
I'm only going to
adventure bikes
mention
shouldn't have
that
them.
tubeless spokes have become very popular. So that if you want spokes and you want tubeless, you can now get that.
Yep.
Just know that sometimes mounting and whatnot is a little bit more difficult. So if you're a shop type person where you're going to have somebody else work on your bike, no big deal. If you're the kind of person who wants to become self-reliant and whatnot, you can do it, but it involves a little more work to change your own tires on spoked tubeless. Well, not the ones you have, but the more popular cross spoked ones like the new Triumphs
Like the BMW.
and GS and BMs. Yeah, they're becoming very popular. The wheels are a lot wider than stock rims, so it takes a little more effort to mount those types of things. Obviously, we've done episodes about tires and tubes. Tubes mean patches in a pinch or spare tube most of the time, and that's usually a skill set that especially folks getting into this don't have right away, and that's not everybody's forte. I think most importantly, same thing. A lot of people in this segment are going to tell you, well, if you ride off-road, you need to have spokes. And that is just not true. So you can buy a good set of tires, be reasonable on tire pressure, and you can run mag rims. It's really not a big deal.
Yeah. Is that really all you want to say about tubeless versus tubes?
I mean, if you had more, you can add to it. But I'm gonna, like I said, we're gonna reel it in a little bit because I'm passionate about that. But I'm really big on a lot of people are gonna say, well, you can't have cast rims and tubeless and ride off road, and I'm like, that is just ridiculous. Most people are not bashing into rocks unless they are foolhardy and unskilled at the same time. Like, for most people, it's like, hey, just know your skill level, be reasonable, don't air down like a maniac on tubeless cast wheels, and you go out and have a good time. Lots of people have done it.
Yep. I concur. I agree. No doubt about it. Heated grips, that's another one of those things. I don't really know if that's an electronics thing or a features thing.
That's a good point. I kind of threw that in there, but you're right. I mean, does it have a wire in it? Does that make it technology?
It's a wire, dude.
I think of features more like creature comforts, and I think technology more like rider aids, so to speak. So that's kind of why I was like, I'll put heated grips in here. That's another premium thing that if you have your heart set on heated grips, that's probably going to cost you a little bit more money because these days that's still a premium feature on most bikes.
Even though every adventure bike should have heated grips,
I'm a huge
It's not
fan.
an argument.
I don't have those on my T7 yet. Actually,
What?
Let me unpack that. Now that I think about it, if you want factory heated grips, you're probably going to end up paying $300 or more.
Yeah, they are pricey.
And those are probably the warmest grips you're ever going to get. If you buy the ones that actually came from the factory, they're probably going to be pretty nice and hot.
They probably integrate really well.
Yeah, you can get aftermarket ones, and I have done that for years. I'll spend $100. And then now they're like $150, but I'll get Oxford heaters most of the time, and those have worked great. I still have a set on my Triumph. And I recently bought a set of detachable grip warmers. They actually are Velcroed around the actual grip themselves. Again, $100. I can, tomorrow, I'm going to put them on in the morning, and then once we get off the trailer, I'm going to take them off and just leave them in the truck, and then I'll put them back on to go home when it's cold. So there's some convenience to that whole trailering thing that you don't have to have all the wires and stuff there. But
Yep. Although it does change the diameter of the grip, and
Yes.
that's not for everybody.
right, exactly. And without turning into the Heated Grip podcast, but I'm just saying, like, hey, there's money to be saved or money to be spent to have no hassle, right? So these are things to think about.
Yep.
Like, do you
Yep.
want all these features? And it's the same as on road and off road. Are you going to ride in February? Are you going to ride in December? Because if you're riding Memorial Day to Labor Day, you probably don't need that feature unless you just want it.
Yep. For the little amount of money that heated grips cost, they're a really nice insurance policy.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I feel about it. Spend $100, get
Yeah.
heated grips.
Yeah. Tomorrow I'll be heated grips and hand mitts, but that's a different podcast.
Yep. My bike has a heated seat on it, dude, which I've never thought about before. It's ridiculous. This bike pumps out more heat than any bike I've ever had, and I complain about bike heat a lot. I don't know if I'll ever use the heated seat on this stupid 901, dude. When
I didn't know
learned
the
I had
Expedition had that. That's what you started saying.
it
That I'm like, wait a
does.
minute, I didn't know the Expedition had that. So
It does, yeah. It's got a heated seat. I was like, then of course I go pull the seat off, and I've got to unplug it after I pull it off. So that drives me crazy because it's like an umbilical cord to my seat, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's a feature. To me, this is kind of stupid. Like I would never pay for that, you know.
Yeah.
My butt's never been that cold.
I think for most people who want to get into the aggressive adventure space, they already know this. These features are not things that they're probably going to use, and
Right.
I've ripped a heated grip wire off a heated grip in the woods before as well.
Yeah, it's happened.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was an expensive shit. So those are things to think about. To your point, right? Like pulling the seat off in an emergency off road. Pay attention. It's one more thing. It's one more connector that you can get mixed up. And this
Yeah.
segues well into the technology portion of this discussion about pros and cons.
Yep.
Yeah, to me, the feature thing is mostly about money and how much time you really want to spend on road versus off.
Well, what about luggage? That's a feature. A lot of bikes come with luggage nowadays.
No, that's a good point. That you can, especially like the Expedition. You know, you got bags with that, if I remember correctly.
Unfortunately, I'd rather have paid $200 less and not came with the chintzy bags and racks that this thing came with. That's my one complaint about this bike is the racks and the bags are. I immediately put them in a box. I'll never use those bags, and the racks are throwaways too, as far as I'm concerned. So if anybody wants to buy some racks and bags from the Expedition, let me know. I'll make you a good deal.
I mean, it's something to think about. To your point, right? The KLR now has a bike with luggage from the factory. The Expedition. I'm sure there are many others out there. This is for folks new to the segment, like sport touring and adventure touring. That was the thing, right? I always think of the old Tiger. 950. 951i. What is
955.
that? Yeah, the 955i had the
Yep.
clamshell bags that matched the bike. Like that was a big thing in like the late 90s. It's not quite been that way recently, but there are some out there that if that's your thing, it works out. But I have a strong suspicion that I know people who have had factory luggage and they've used it because they bought it, but I think a lot of people said they wouldn't do it again.
Factory luggage is usually really expensive and really not the luggage you would have chosen on your own. And I had that 955 with the clamshell bags, and I put it through hell. To be honest with you, it did pretty good, and it was pretty slick too the way it mounted. But I don't know, man. It's not. Sometimes it's a great thing. Just depends on what you're gonna do. Usually, if you're gonna be more of a street rider, it's a better thing to have on there. If you're gonna ride off road, I think you're gonna do better in the aftermarket.
That makes sense. No, that's something to consider. Yeah, for the touring folks that they might save a few bucks on factory, they might fit a little bit better. Some things are intended. No, I like that. It's good info. I've obviously never done that, so I'm glad that you put in those 2 cents. We mentioned screens for a hot second. I want to make sure I touched on that. I'm of the mindset that the more off-road that you choose to be, the less tall screen matters, and actually the more of a liability it becomes. Like
it's a guillotine.
Yeah, people get hit in the face with them pretty frequently. Like my T7 is actually just at the space where I'm like, man, I might cut this down because I'm afraid I'm going to get whacked in the melon here.
You need all the help you can get in that department too.
Yeah. I have a face for radio. So just keep that in mind that, adjustable screens, remember to turn them down before you get off road. And there's a piece of all that comes in there. And
Yeah.
if you ride while sitting and are taking it easy, no big deal. But yeah, it ends up being people standing up, leaning forward. They weighted it wrong. They hit a rock and they got clocked. It is not good.
It's so funny. The Expedition comes with a tall windscreen. So, like, here's this badass off-road version of the Norden 901. Here's a tall windscreen. Dude, I'm going to go in the summertime. It works pretty good, but in the summertime, I'm buying a short one.
Yeah.
I mean, what the heck? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, it's a bizarre thing.
That's another good thing that you brought up. If you're more of a summer rider, and we didn't talk about this, but if you happen to have what ends up being a hot bike, and man, I wish I had a list in front of me of motorcycles that are notorious for, the radiator dumping air on your leg and just setting you on fire. I think of the old Tiger 800. I was amazed how hot that thing was.
It was a rooster, dude.
But in the summertime, you may or may not want a screen. Again, if you're going to be on the highway a lot, absolutely. You want a big, tall screen. But when you're on the back roads most of the time and you're mostly a summer rider, and that is a thing on the T7 where I'm like, man, I got to stand up just so I can get some air because this thing works. So, and it's the stock screen and it's not that tall.
Interesting.
So it's just something I throw out there. I've seen guys like the Africa Twin. I've seen a lot of guys just take the screen off in the summertime. Like they're like, whatever. I don't care. This thing looks like a Decepticon. Like
the 950 guys, we would cut the stock screen down. There was like a certain amount that you would cut off with a Dremel tool or whatever, and that was the go-to, and it because the stock screen on that bike was awful for everybody. Nobody likes the stock screen on that bike. So it's funny.
We've been in the weeds about this, but all of this is to say, like, remember what kind of rider you are, what kind of rider you plan to be, because these choices are things that you're like, oh, I absolutely want all of these extra features. And a lot of them, I mean, everything's a compromise, like you said. All of them have cons. So try to mirror up what you envision you're going to be with these things.
Yep.
Which brings us to our favorite Luddite topic, rider aids and technology.
Dun, dun, dun.
How's that cruise control working out on that new bike for you?
I have used it once and it's really weird. It's really weird. I've never had, dude, my last bunch of bikes going all the way back to the 955i Tiger we were talking about before. Dude, I remember buying a John Deere tractor O-ring, a giant O-ring that would act as a throttle lock.
Yeah.
Just to, so riders have been looking for cruise control for quite some time now. Everybody I know has told me, Flux, you're going to have cruise control. It's going to change your life. And I'm like, really? I mean, that seems like an overstatement to me. I still think that. It's the cruise control is weird because I put it on and now I can do things with my right arm, like adjust my wind. And I mean, I'm right-handed, so like, but my whole, 2.5 decades I've been doing things on the bike with my left hand. Like, I'm pretty good at wiping my shield with my left hand now. So to do it with my right hand does not feel natural. Yeah. There's so many innuendos in this conversation. It's not even funny. But it doesn't feel natural. So there's going to be some sort of a learning curve there. I have no doubt that when I get used to it, it's going to be pretty cool. But like, I've never bought a bike because it was not a deciding factor for this bike. It just happened to have it, so I'll use it. The 890 guys have to pay extra to unlock the cruise control.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I don't think I would do that, but maybe my mind. Ask me next year.
That's what I was going to say.
Maybe my mind will have changed.
The listeners need to make sure they come back and comment on this later on after he gets a few more rides in. We'll see.
Yeah.
I've wanted electronic cruise control for a while, and apparently I didn't want it bad enough, right? Because I bought a T7.
I was about to say, what?
Just walked right past it. Because I'm a day tripper, and because I don't spend days on the highway. Now, I will ride 3 hours. We'll call it 3, maybe 3.5 max on the highway. Like, that does happen from time to time. But I use Go Cruise. It's just a throttle lock. It's a real cheap one.
Yep.
I've used it for years, and it does the job. I've had it on. I mean, it's on all my bikes now, right? It's really easy. It's enough to give my hand a break. So if I need to reach up and do something, button something, whatever else it is, it'll hold the throttle long enough that it's not an issue.
Right.
But I do want that eventually. But I definitely could see the same thing. People who plan on doing long trips, especially a lot of highway, a lot of consistent speeds without stopping, and so on and so forth. I can see the convenience. to some degree, for me, I want electronic cruise just so I don't speed. Like that's to me, that's the biggest issue of being on the
That's
highway
fair.
is getting bored and just twisting the throttle. Not to say that if I had electronic cruise control, I wouldn't do that. But yeah, if you have the same problem that I do, that short attention span, so there's some perks to setting the cruise. Although, to me, as I've learned as getting older, getting distracted at doing the same speed is equally dangerous. So I have to think about that too. That if I got all this time to look around, that might not end well because I don't have to pay attention to the speedometer anymore. But
Yeah, it's a
different
tough
podcast.
thing. I mean, to me, it's just I can see the benefit in the cruise just to relax your hand a little bit,
Sure.
relax your wrist or what have you. And as I like wake up every morning and sit on the side of my bed and assess what part of my body is going to hurt today, I can get there.
Yeah.
But
What
yeah.
like I said, if you're touring, makes sense. If it's a feature that it comes with the bike and you just have to have it, makes perfect sense. At the same time, the electronic packages on some of these bikes now matter. I mean, that if you were having an argument about T7 versus 890, there's no doubt cruise control is a deciding factor for some people. But yeah, Go Cruise is an option if you want to save a few bucks.
Yep.
Mind you, I understand the suspension is a huge part of that discussion as well. But if you were discussing the base 890 or the base Expedition with less adjustable suspension, then yes, there's that whole cruise control or whatnot.
Hey, there's a lot of people that will not choose a bike if it does not have
Right.
electronic cruise control. Like it's out of the
Yeah.
that's like the deciding factor. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but
Sure.
there's a large amount of people that I've heard
Yeah.
over time say that.
Agreed.
So it's a thing for most people.
I would throw ABS in there in the same place. I didn't really write ABS down because it's pretty. I wouldn't call it
Standard
ubiquitous
now.
at this point. But it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
if it's in Europe, it's required. You can buy bikes without it here, but at this point, you got to get a pretty small bike. Even the Himalayan I had, it was I think it was front cruise control on all the time, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly. Like so that's or sorry, not cruise control, front ABS on all the time. So
Yeah.
it's like that now.
Well, I'll
Rider
throw this
modes-
caveat
sorry, go
out.
ahead.
I'll throw this caveat out too before you switch up. I don't use the cruise control in my car very often, so I'll do a
almost-
10-hour ride and never use cruise
Yeah.
control in my car. So take it for what it's worth, everybody. I might not be the example you want to go with on this cruise control thing.
I never had that conversation, although I ask people because I am always amazed by the number of people who don't use it in their car. I'm going to assume full stop that everyone who wants cruise control on a motorcycle probably uses it in their car.
Oh yeah. My wife thinks I'm an idiot for not using it in my car, and I don't know. I mean, dude, I drive a 5-speed manual 35-year-old truck too.
Roll windows.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Absolutely.
When they work.
That's funny. Usually it was electric that didn't work back in the day.
Oh well,
Rider modes is another piece of this, and that's
Yep.
also becoming more ubiquitous. Again, the Himalayan, which is one of the cheapest adventure bikes that you can buy, also had rider modes. They had a rain mode.
Really?
Yeah, they had a rain mode and a street mode. They have a different name for it. It doesn't matter. But yeah, they had
Yep.
modes on there, and I used both, and you could tell the difference between both. And I rode in the rain and was happy for rain mode on
Yep.
that thing on knobby tires. So
Yep.
there's that piece out there. But it's are these things that you want on the front end, so they're going to somewhat refine your search because they're only available on certain bikes, and that
Yep.
means that it's going to change your budget. And if the things that you don't want, you're probably going to save some money, but at the same time, it's now harder and harder to get away with getting a bike that doesn't have some of those features.
I paid more money to have a bike with ride modes that I'll never use. It's funny because I can go into rally mode or explorer mode, and they call it on here. I can control how much slip the rear wheel has for traction in rally. I'm not going to use that. I set it at 5 and
Yeah.
be done with it. Like, I'm just not the one who wants to change all this stuff. Let me just give me the coolest, the most of everything.
Yeah.
And then I'll just figure it out. You know what I mean? It's my brother, on the other hand, he loves it. He's like, oh yeah, dude, I switch between rally mode and sport mode and this mode and that mode. I'm like, how do you manage to, like, I just want to ride motorcycles, dude. How are you doing all this while we're riding? It's no wonder you're always behind me.
It's something to think about, right? if you're the kind of person who, wants the newest phone, always gets all the updates, like
Yeah.
likes technology and trinkets and whatnot, it makes perfect sense that you're going to want, a new adventure bike that has all of the features in it. And I think, to your point, right, similar to somebody who buys a bike every 2 years just because they want to experience something different. Some people just like having stuff to tinker with. So they like
Yeah.
changing the settings and seeing what all that stuff does. I
Yeah.
think, similar to what you said about day trippers, I believe, because I didn't talk about adjustable suspension, that probably would have been a good thing to add to features on there.
Yeah.
Like adjustable suspension, I think lots of people want all of these techno features and they want adjustable suspension, but the reality is they're going to set it and not change it. Like, once you get to once you get to the setting that you prefer, and you end up leaving it there.
Yeah.
I do believe people probably do use rain mode. If they get caught out in it, they will flip over to it. But day in, day out on a sunny and 70 day, I suspect lots of people kind of leave it there. So if you're having some angst about spending the money, or you're having a difficult time deciding between each bike, and you're not a technophile that likes having all the latest technology, I have a strong suspicion that you won't miss it as much as people will tell you.
Yep. I totally agree with that. I don't know. To me, it's just a bunch of other things to keep up with.
Yeah.
I sometimes think about how our grandfathers would have ridden a motorcycle. They just would have maybe put a helmet on, worn some jeans and some high top boots, and they'd have started the bike, and choked it and then gone on their way. And we're like, we got to sync cardos and make sure we're in the right ride mode and our ABS is the right way. Dude, now I see that you can unplug your blinkers and even unplug your license plate and put it in your backpack. And, dude, seriously. And
we pulled your string with this one, didn't we?
I swear to God. And make sure your GPS is set up, and we got to make sure the music's not playing. So sometimes I just think about all this stuff.
Yeah, it makes me think,
God,
USB ports in the glove box on your adventure bike. That's a real thing.
Exactly.
It's definitely a real thing on sport touring bikes. I think the Trophy, I think, had that back in the day. That was old.
Yep.
I think I do want to mention suspension, make a short comment about that. If you want adjustable suspension and you are not 5'10" and 180 pounds, so if you're really light, or we'll say 200 plus, and you end up having suspension work done anyway, I've said this on other shows, you are probably going to have the suspension done regardless. So adjustability falls into the same thing I just said. You may actually not adjust it a whole lot. So I think of 890 versus 890R, or I guess what is it 790 now versus 890R. There's arguments that if you want to save a few bucks and you know that you're outside of the target weight, over under, that you're going to do the suspension work anyway, then it isn't, the adjustability isn't going to matter quite as much. So you don't have to spend that money if you think you're going to end up buying springs and other stuff anyway.
I think the adjustability comes into play more for people that aren't going to mess with it all the time, but they want to find that right setting that works for them most of the time. And it may be different. Your setting may be different than my setting.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that you're going to change it all. I know almost nobody that will just like change it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I go back and forth depending on a couple things, but not even I don't do it. I don't think you do.
Oh, I do.
I don't think we all the time.
No, it's one of those, like, there's no doubt that I will ride a bike on the pavement when it's marginally uncomfortable because of where I'm going off road. But I also find that you're right. I'm in my happy place on pavement and gravel, and then get into a place off road where I'm like, oh wow, like this is too stiff, this is too bouncy, whatever.
Oh yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah,
I'll do that same thing. Yeah, I don't think most people do that, but I think that there's I think I'll do that, but I'm not going to claim that I take full advantage of having adjustable suspension. But I definitely will make adjustments.
And I'll make the same argument, especially if this is your first adventure bike. If you're not used to making adjustments on your suspension, it's going to be worth your time to start learning how to do that or consulting people. Because same thing, I've met lots of people who have premium suspension and have no idea how to adjust it. So they ride it in the condition that it's in. And I'm like, you're not getting the full value out of your motorcycle. And again, you don't have to, right? You can just have it because you want it. But I'm just saying, like, hey, you paid for that. So to some degree it helps. But again, if you're just getting into the space, like you don't necessarily need it right away. Like learn what you like and where you're going to go in the adventure space and then worry about getting some of these extra features.
At the very least, set your SAG and make sure that your dealer has put the suspension settings in properly from the damn factory. Because every bike now comes with settings. I mean, on the Husky, it literally is on the bike. It's like, I forget what they call it, but comfort setting, sport setting, two-up setting. Choose one. Make sure that it's all in the right place, because I have bought bikes that were not in the right place. And at least have a baseline. At least start there. Set your SAG. Figure that out. So this cannot be the suspension podcast.
No.
I don't know enough about it. I know enough how to set my things up. I don't know how to tell you how to set your things up.
I have opinions, but we do have a podcast on suspension, so go back and listen to that. But I just, same thing. Like I said, a lot of people have their mind set on it, but reality says, especially if this is your first or second go around in the adventure space and you're not spending a bunch of time off road, it's probably not that consequential. So you can, again, save a few bucks. The weird question is, how much does dealer network matter? You and I have talked mostly about name brands, but I've been having a lot of discussions about Cove lately. And I mean, what is it? Was it Norton that we were talking about on the News for 2026 episode? Like there's more and more companies coming out. Moto Morini. There's more reputable adventure bikes hitting the market, but they don't have quite the same dealer network. And what are the pros and cons for that?
Well, that is a pretty weird question. You're right about that. And I would say that to a lot of people, a dealer network is a very big deal. I know, and people that will not buy a bike because they say there's not enough dealers near me.
Yeah.
KTM's an example of that. I mean,
Aprilia hit me just now, and I was like, that's a really good example, because I love the Touareg, but it's a risk.
It is, it is. Aprilia is a huge example of that, because we have one by us, but before this one opened in North Georgia, I didn't know where the nearest Aprilia dealership was. Triumph can be an example of that. That's one place where Harley Davidson always succeeded. You knew that, especially if you were close to a freeway, you could probably go 10 exits and there'd be another there'd be another Harley dealer, So it's a factor for a lot of people. I do think that things are starting to change, maybe not for the big OEMs, but to your point, the Coves, the Moto Marinis, this maybe the CF Motos, some of these other bike manufacturers, to where maybe they adopt a little bit more of like a Tesla, model of doing business, to where you go in and you or maybe you don't go in anywhere, maybe you're online and you go, this is what I want, these are the features I want. They either ship it to your house or to some sort of like a service provider type of establishment, and you go get it, and that's that. They're doing that with the new. It's not a motorcycle, but the new Slate EV trucks. They're like, well, what if it needs work? Well, they have a supplied service network with other mechanics throughout the country that you can bring your truck to and get it worked on. I think things might be changing. That's just a gut feeling,
I think Cove, among others, is like really paving the way in this space, because they don't have a huge dealer network. I actually think of Ural and as well, that to some degree they find shops that can do some of the work. Here's the biggest thing that I think of. These days with the technology, and I just heard somebody talking about it the other day, they had a problem with their bike, and it created a digital situation where the bike was doing something goofy, and they had to like reflash the ECU or something like that. So you and I are wrenching people, right? We're going to do the vast majority of work on our bike.
Right.
And I see that as the issue, is if you get somebody who's coming into the space who is normally comfortable doing their own work, but they get into some crazy digital issue, and the nearest dealership is 3 or 4 hours away. And that's why I brought that up. It's like, hey, you want this Touareg, and you don't, you have no beef working on your own bike. Ideally, between eBay and the internet and whatever else, you can get parts shipped, direct to your house, because, the Aprilia dealer does drop shipping, or you're ordering off Revzilla and they're Aprilia dealer, whatever it is. But yeah, that's the situation where it's like, great. now I have to take this to a dealer because apparently I can't fix this. So that's a pro and con thing to think about. It's like, even if you wrench on your own stuff, the newer bikes have had some weird techno issues. I don't think your brother's had any of those issues, but he's had some,
he's had
some interesting issues with his new bike.
Yep. It helps. I mean, look, I bought my Husky. I had reservations about buying the Husky, all the same reservations everybody else that buys one probably has, and some of them are cliche, but I have a good dealer here, and I know that he's going to take care of me. I mean, so I've not traditionally cared about having a dealer, but with this bike, I was like, yeah, I know this guy's, first of all, he's been in business for, I don't even know how many years, decades, I know he's not going anywhere, so it gives me a little bit of reassurance that if I have a problem, I can text him or call him and say, hey, Bobby, I got this going on, or I got that going on. And he happens to ride an 890, so he knows firsthand, like, I bought the Power Cell airbox because he put that on his bike. Yeah. So he's like, I know this works, If you just have some random dealer, I don't think it means as much as if you have like an actual dealer who's actually taken the time to reinvest in the community, to have things like BDR screenings, to have tech days, shop rides, coffee gatherings, breakfast rides. I think that just saying dealers is maybe a little too vague.
That's a good point.
There's dealers and there's dealers,
Yeah, it's somebody's going to sell you a part and somebody who's going to make sure it fits. Those are two different people.
Right. Yeah, the dealership that is cliche that we all think of when you go in and the parts kit is like, I can get that here in 2 weeks, but we don't have it in stock. You're like, bro, I can get it tomorrow for less money, less aggravation. I don't have to look at you again, and away I go. So I think there's different ways of handling the business, and I think maybe it'll start ironing itself out a little bit. Do you understand what I'm trying to say there?
No, I think I'm glad you mentioned that. To me, traditionally it was like you would have people that like, I'm not going to work on my bike, so I have to make sure it's a bike that isn't a dealer that's within whatever my comfort range is. My gut says 100 miles or less for most people. Yeah. And then, there's other people like, I don't care, between eBay, Rocky Mountain, and Revzilla, I can have anything delivered to my house. I don't care. Right. So you have those people that turn their own wrenches. And I think that's exactly it. As we are now entering a space, fortunately, that we can kind of blend the two. And to your point as well, just because you have a dealer that's within 100 miles of your house doesn't mean that that's a dealer that you're going to have a positive experience with. Actually, that reminds me. I think your brother falls into that range as well.
He does. He'll pass by 3 dealerships to get to. Yeah. Dude, he'll deal with. He lives in Louisville. Right. He'll deal with our buddy in Atlanta.
Right.
I mean, so.
Yeah, that is the catch, right? Is if you're not going to do any of the work, please also keep in mind that do some homework on that brand before you buy it to make sure that if you don't want to travel long distance, that dealer is going to take care of you. Because I have heard that particular issue out of Louisville.
Yep. We'll just leave it at that.
We've talked a lot about both ends of the spectrum, and I didn't write down any ideas, but I was thinking to myself, kind of, if you were a strict adventure tourer, like very little off-road, and you did multi-day trips, like more than a weekend, what would your weapon of choice be based on all the answers that you've given so far throughout the podcast?
It would, dude, I think you're hard-pressed to beat a 1300 GS, man. Yeah. And really, if the 1300 GSA wasn't so butt ugly, it looks like a freaking lunchbox on wheels. First of all, let me say this. When the 1300 GS came out with that X headlight and people were super divided about how it looked, I liked it from day one. It's more compact than the 1250. I think it looks better than the 1250. It rides phenomenally better than the 1250.
Sure.
That 1300 GSA is ugly as crap, dude. That thing has no lines that look good. It looks square. It looks like something my son built out of some Legos. It's hideous.
I tell people my bike may be ugly, but I can't see any of that from the seat when I'm riding it. I don't really care.
If I drop $30,000 on a motorcycle, I better want to look back at that thing when I'm walking. There's the old meme, like if you're walking away from your bike and you don't stop and look back at it
Yeah.
for a second, then you bought the wrong one. Like I'm an artist. Like
Right.
I have to have that visceral attachment to the
Yep.
way that the bike looks. It has to look cool. Like that's all there is to it. So if it needs a function, like that's fine, but it also has to look badass for
Fair
me.
enough.
So the 1300 GS for me, I mean, I think it probably deserves its place as the top of the food chain in terms of I'm never really going off road. It's going to be a great, touring bike. I happen to do think it's going to be very good
Yeah.
in the dirt also. But yeah, what about you? Where are you at on that?
I think I would probably go Tiger 800. If I was doing strictly pavement, I would have a hard time choosing between the new Tiger 800 or potentially the 900 GT. I would probably go, get a triple and get in that range.
Yeah.
I could make an argument for the Husky Expedition, just to live large affordably, and I like middleweight. I don't feel like I need a big engine there. But I really like the triple, especially if I was going to be on the pavement. And I
Triple's a
kind of
great
want
choice.
I kind of want dual 17s, but at the same time, I like 1917, so I can
Yep.
kind of go any way there. So
Yep.
there is a what is it? Not a moto bucket list. Shoot, no, I can't remember the name of the episode that we did, but basically, like, what are your favorite motorcycles or whatever it is, or on these. There's a great episode on that. So, but wow, speak English. Go back and look at that.
Everybody just fast forward that
Yeah,
last
no
little
joke, just
5 seconds.
Let's go the other way. If you were going to do, actually, I think Kentucky Adventure Tour is probably a good example, or Chattahoochee BDRX. And that was really your cup of tea, and you were trailering pretty much everywhere except those trips. What would you pick?
That one, I don't necessarily. I'm not so dug in the heels on this one. I've not ridden a I don't know if you're going to agree with me that it's an adventure bike. I've not ridden a Cove 450.
I think it's an adventure bike.
Okay, because that's a windscreen, right?
That's
Yeah.
Yep. That's how I am.
I think that would be one I would really like to have a go on.
Yeah.
I'm highly interested in the Cove, that or the 800.
Right.
For that, for that type of situation, I'd be really interested in either of those. For that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
Yeah, kind of bare bones, lightweight. Yeah, I'm trailering it.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about street comfort necessarily. Yeah, I think those ones might be there. What about yourself?
If I was, using a trailer or a hitch carrier or something like that, I would probably do. My gut says, especially KAT and where I like to hang out, probably CRF 300L Rally. That's probably
a great choice too.
I want to go the lightest possible, most suspension, but still have some creature comforts because there are some sections of longer pavement, and just sit down and paddle. And then next, I actually think Himalayan 450 would be, if I was doing something more like, if I was doing something more like BDRX, I would probably go that way, because I actually feel like on that bike especially, you really can just sit down and paddle and be lazy. Like it has enough juice that it can just slog through things. I love Break Magazine. He's the guy that said that. He's like, if you want to be old school and just paddle, you can do this all day, or you can stand up and just, rail it. It'll do either one. So yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I need to ride that bike.
Yeah, I don't think that you will find it as superlative as I do, but it's relevant to this podcast because it really is a taste thing. That some people listening right now, it's like it's all about performance, right? It's like I need more CCs, or I want the most horsepower in the class, whatever else is, and that's fine. I mean, that to me, I think if your brother's listening, I'm sure he's gonna love this. I think that's part of what turns his gears, right? He likes the performance side of it. It matters a lot to him. He wants that thing to be able to do wheelies or whatever else it is. So that exists. Whereas for me, I really like to have a tool for every job. So I like the differentiation. But usually it's about flexibility. Like I'm okay with being uncomfortable, we'll say on the street, because if I can get deeper into the woods, combined with being, I'm quirky about engines. So there's that whole discussion.
Yep.
I think that's a good segue to you like what you like. I almost
You
said it out
never
loud.
asked me what if I was in the middle. What bike would I choose?
Okay, let's hold up then. Back it up.
Yeah, dude.
What's
Yeah.
your, besides the bike that you already own?
Oh, well, that's the one I
I
would
was going to
choose.
say, like, yeah, I have a T7 and you have an 890 Husky. They're like
I
what?
just didn't want to leave. I don't want to leave any categories out, man.
No,
That's all.
I mean that is the stretch, right? When you live in the middle of the road, or as I was leading into, you like what you like. You can make any of these bikes do
Yeah,
the thing that you want to do, right?
you totally can.
Yeah, how much pain are you willing to deal with on road, off road, long distance, whatever else it is? All like it said, Sierra 300L, it'll do everything on here. It'll do 70 miles an hour on the highway. Like, just do you want to do that? Is the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
I would like to do that just to see if that's true.
yeah. I mean, you and I both know I've seen, BMW 1250 GSs in some of the worst places ever that I would not take them to, but other people like doing that. That's their jam.
Yep.
So if we circle back to it, if anybody made it this far through the podcast, like, hey, I'm going to tell you that these are things that you should consider, and these are the pros and cons of those. But in the end, the heart wants what it wants. So no matter how much logic I'm trying to feed you, I'm talking to Logan if he's still listening at this point. I get it. You're going to buy the bike that you have your heart set on, and there's nothing wrong with that, because not having the thing you've lusted after might be worse than having it and deciding you don't love it after 2 years.
It's like they said in Wayne's World, it will be mine. Oh, yes, it will be mine. Now I've definitely lost anybody younger than me in this listening audience, but yeah.
Well, I hope people have thought about it here, that there's a huge spectrum of prices that you can look at, pros and cons to new versus used. We've beat seat height to death for sure. Understand that where you are now on bikes, touring versus day tripping versus trailering is an option, and you might go through every phase of that. So I guess I should probably also add in this mid discussion as I'm recapping, like, who you ride with and who you meet is going to shape your taste in this space a lot. We beat up, pros and cons to weight, feature, technology, and dealer network. So that's the recap. Before we shut it down, I also want to mention, I hope folks have enjoyed the episode. Do me a favor and leave us comments about some of the stuff we've talked about. So those things that I just recapped, what are the most important things for you? Please leave us comments on what are the deciding factors and what you choose an adventure bike. And if you've enjoyed the show, please share that with your friends. Send them a link to the show, because we're really happy to hear from more people in the audience. We can't thank everybody enough for how supportive they've been. Any last words, Mark?
Not from me. Like you said, you like what you like and go like that. Don't listen to us if it didn't make sense. Buy what you like. It's all good.
Catch the listeners down the road.